Bush is playing the hits across North America with Filter and Rival Sons. Musicians of every genre gathered together to support those affected by the LA wildfires. And we lose a true musical legend, Mr. Garth Hudson of the band. I break it all down on this edition of the Rock News Roundup Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rock News Roundup Podcast here on the Nick Chino Music YouTube channel. I am your host, Mr. Nick Chino. Thank you for joining me this week for the latest in rock music news, reviews, and discussion. The mics are on, the devil horns are up, and we're ready to talk about the latest in rock music news, including talking about Bush booking a North American tour across North America. We're going to be playing the hits with Rival Sons and Filter. Musicians of every genre are gathering together to support the victims of the LA wildfires with the FireAid concert, and we've lost a true musical legend in Garth Hudson of the band. Going to be talking about those topics on this episode of the Rock News Roundup Podcast. But first, want to invite you to like, share, and subscribe if you're watching this video on YouTube. Would really appreciate that. Or if you're listening to this on the audio version of the podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this, we'd appreciate a rating and review so we can let more people know about the show. And if you're going back to YouTube, if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, latest video up there on the channel right now is my deep dive into Oasis and their 1997 classic, Do You Know What I Mean? It's not just a song, it's the song that changed my life, and I talk a little bit about that in that video. So if you want to check it out, my deep dive into Oasis and their song, Do You Know What I Mean, is up right now on the YouTube channel. But let's get to our first headliner topic on this edition of the Rock News Roundup Podcast, and that is Bush is going on tour across North America and South America, along with Rival Sons and Filter. If you're a fan of 90s rock or 2000s rock or 2010s rock, if you're a Rival Sons fan, or maybe just a fan of rock in general, a solid fan of solid three-band lineups, this is going to be the tour for you. This information comes from Consequence of Sound, and they're saying that Bush has announced a solid triple bill tour with Rival Sons and Filter across North America and South America. They're calling it Loaded, the greatest hits tour, so you can expect all the fans or all the bands to be bringing the hits on this tour. You know, Bush will be playing songs like Glycerin and Machine Head and Come Down and all those big songs, maybe some Greedy Fly and some Swallowed. Hey, maybe even playing Letting the Cables Sleep if they really want to get into their deep hits. That one coming from The Science of Things back in 1999. And then Filter and Rival Sons. Like, that's a great lineup as well. So this tour is going to kick off in Santiago, Chile on March the 28th before heading north for a bunch of dates that are going to be happening in May. And the cool thing is about this is that Canada is getting some major love on this tour. As a Canadian, I can definitely appreciate that because, you know, this is probably one of the best, maybe one of the better, you know, international non-Canadian tours that we've gotten in a very, very long while. We get our fair share of awesome bands who come to Canada, but the thing is when they come, they usually just go to Toronto, maybe Vancouver, maybe Montreal, maybe not a lot of the stops in between. But this one is hitting a lot of secondary markets in Canada that I think is really, really cool for a band like Bush and for these big bands, Bush, Filter, and Rival Sons. I know they're a little bit nostalgic, even Rival Sons, who are the newer band of the bunch. But to see them going across Canada playing secondary markets like Kelowna, BC is really, really cool. And then playing some spots in between Vancouver and Toronto, you know, going to Alberta, playing Calgary, playing Edmonton, going to Saskatchewan, playing Saskatoon, playing Winnipeg and Manitoba. And then they're coming to my neck of the woods in Southern Ontario, and they're playing some really cool cities as well. They're not just going to Toronto. They're actually not going to Toronto at all on this tour, which is something I can definitely dig. So they're going to be playing in Ontario in cities like Kitchener and St. Catharines, which in all honesty actually makes me want to go more to this show. I was telling my girlfriend Danielle that I want to go to more concerts this year because in 2024 we didn't go to a lot of concerts at all. I think we went to maybe one or two concerts, and that was kind of It was kind of a combination of maybe not as many bands coming around that we wanted to go see, but also the price of concerts is absolutely crazy these days, as anybody out there can attest. If you bought a concert ticket in the last little while, very, very expensive. And I want to go see all these bands that I love, but I'm always hesitant when I look at the price. And then, like I was saying, most bands come to Toronto when they come to Canada. That's usually the only market that they play across the country. And I've been to my fair share of concerts in Toronto. I still go to my fair share of concerts in Toronto, but I kind of hate going to Toronto because it's always just a huge deal to go there, to travel to Toronto, to deal with the traffic, to find parking, to go to the venue. Sometimes it just doesn't feel worth it. So, it's not really as big of a deal to go drive to Kitchener or to St. Catharines, which are kind of in either direction of me here in Hamilton. So it's kind of cool. It's more appealing to go see a band in St. Catharines or to go see them in Kitchener. There's more parking, there's less traffic, there's less stress, and you get to go see some pretty huge bands in Bush and Filter and Rival Sons. And I'm thinking about my concert budget for the year. I think I already spent most of my money on Oasis tickets to go see them in Toronto at Rogers Stadium in August. So that definitely limits my concert budget for 2025, but I really do want to try to go to this. But the prices, they don't look too bad considering what you get. You get three pretty big bands on one bill. Taking a look at Ticketmaster.ca, most of the tickets, I'm taking a look at the show at the Meridian Center in St. Catharines, which is near Niagara Falls. They're in like the $70 to $100 range, which is fair. Most shows are gonna cost you that much. Still a lot per person, in my opinion. $70 per person. That's still almost $200 when you factor in the fees. Probably even more than that to go to this show. Even with those three bands on the bill, it's still a lot of money. So I'm still on the fence whether I'm gonna go attend these shows or not. But in also other good news or cool news for Bush fans, Gavin Rossdale, the frontman of Bush, has announced with iHeartRadio and in this article on Consequence of Sound, the title of the next Bush album. It's going to be their 10th studio album, and this may change in time, but right now he's calling the 10th Bush album I Beat Loneliness. And he's saying that so many people these days are experiencing struggles, and for us to overcome those negative feelings and move on with our lives, that's kind of the theme of the title of the record. And I'm sure lyrically it's making its way in there as well. But some new music from Bush probably coming in 2025. But in the meantime, they're going to be going out and playing the hits across North America with a lot of shows in Canada, across Canada. Like I'm saying, if you're a Canadian music fan, a lot of these bands that come from outside of Canada, whether it be American or British or whatever, tend to just go to Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. Not a lot of them tend to hit those secondary markets and those middle markets throughout the country. So very cool to see that people in Kitchener and St. Catharines and Kelowna and BC and other places in Alberta and across the country are going to get a chance to see this show. So tickets for this tour are on sale now, and you can go buy those right away. You can do it right now. I don't know if I will. I'm very tempted because this is a solid bill. I could definitely see myself enjoying every band on this bill because I'm pretty familiar with a lot of the music that they're making these days and in the past. So I think this would be enjoyable. I'm on the fence about buying tickets, but let me know if you're thinking of buying tickets for this tour of Bush, Filter, and the Rival Sons in the comments below. Let's get a conversation going. What do you think of ticket prices these days? Even with a solid 3-band bill like this, where you have 3 really solid bands on the bill playing the stage that night, it's still a little bit pricey, at least for me. But let me know in the comments whether you're going to be going to the Greatest Hits tour with Bush or if you're going to save the money for something else. Let me know in the comments below. And our next headliner topic on the Rock News Roundup podcast is talking about FireAid. This also coming from Consequence of Sound. The LA wildfires, as we know, have taken a devastating toll on the LA area in Southern California. Still sending my love and good vibes and positivity out there to everybody in LA and Southern California. Sending our good vibes to everybody to rebuild and to heal. But now, in typical musician and artist fashion, bands and artists are banding together. And only the way they know how to benefit the people affected by the wildfires in LA. They're putting together the FireAid benefit. This is being put together by Live Nation. It's a benefit concert that's going to be happening in LA on January the 30th at the Intuit Dome and the Kia Forum, both in downtown Los Angeles. Like I said, this info coming from Consequence of Sound, and it sounds like they really got an all-star lineup put together for this event, spanning across different genres. We got rock, we got pop, we got hip hop, we got everything in between for this event, and some really, really big names coming together for this FireAid benefit concert, including Billie Eilish, one of the biggest names in music, Red Hot Chili Peppers, of course, we have to see them there. They are the biggest proponents of California, being the California natives themselves. Dave Matthews Band and John Mayer, Earth, Wind and Fire, Joni Mitchell, Canadian icon there, Stevie Wonder, Fear, No Doubt are getting back together for this show, as well as the Black Crowes are going to be there. So the list goes on and on and on for this benefit concert. So tickets go on sale. I'm recording this on Tuesday, January the 21st. Tickets for this benefit concert go on sale on January the 22nd. So if you're in the LA area, you're going to be able to buy tickets for this tomorrow, and they're going to be distributing the funds from the ticket sales for this show to various charities and various organizations in the LA area for both short-term initiatives to help people who need help immediately, whether that be funding or shelter or housing or food or anything like that. And then they're going to also be investing the money into long-term initiatives that are going to help people in LA, because it's not just a temporary thing. People in LA who have lost their homes and lost various things in these wildfires, they're going to need time to rebuild. So it's nice to know that both the artists themselves are putting in the time and the work to make sure that they can raise as much money as possible for this charity, and then that the organizations who receive this money are going to distribute it in a way that is responsible, and that's going to help as many people as possible. At least that is the hope. Anytime they put together these kinds of events, you know what? And the thing is that musicians, we always step up when we're needed. Musicians around the world are known to be the first people to offer their help in musical form when these devastating things happen. When you think back to past big charity concerts, whether that be Live Aid or Farm Aid or anything like that, now with FireAid, it's really, really cool to see lots of big names come together to sell these tickets and make sure that they can raise as much money as possible for the victims of these wildfires. And then if you're not able to attend the shows on your own, they're going to be simulcasting these concerts on various streaming services. So as I've read here on Consequence of Sound, Apple TV, Max, Netflix, Paramount Plus, Prime Video, and YouTube. Not really sure. I'm imagining that this is going to primarily be available to American subscribers of those streaming services, but with YouTube, it might be available for everybody. Not sure if it's going to be available on Canadian streaming services. We tend to just do our own thing when it comes to airing that content on Canadian streaming services, but very cool that you can watch it online. And like I said, tickets for the FireAid concert go on sale tomorrow, Wednesday, January the 22nd, which is when I'm going to be uploading this podcast. So they'll probably already be sold out by then. But anyways, FireAid is going to be happening on January, or the tickets go on sale January 22nd. The event itself is going to be happening on January the 30th in LA at the Intuit Dome and the Kia Forum. A great way for these musicians and these people who are not, LA natives and from all over the country and all over the world to get together and support people who've been affected by the LA wildfires. So this is really just a great positive thing to hear. I'm sure it's going to be a great show, and it's for a great cause. So I just wanted to mention that here on the show. And again, sending love and good vibes out to everybody in LA who's been affected by these wildfires. We're thinking of you while we're freezing in the cold here in Southern Ontario. And the last headliner topic on this episode of the Rock News Roundup Podcast. Speaking of Southern Ontario and famous people who have come from this part of the world, this is actually a very, very sad story. I actually just read about this right before I started recording this episode of the podcast, and that is Garth Hudson. The multi-instrumentalist and organist for The Band, one of the greatest bands of all time, passed away today at the age of 87 at a nursing home in Woodstock, New York. Garth Hudson, obviously a son of Southern Ontario. He's from the London Stratford area of Ontario. And Garth Hudson was the last living member of The Band, the legendary The Band that featured mostly Canadian members, except for Levon Helm, who was from Arkansas. The band obviously got their start here in Canada when they were the backing band for Ronnie Hawkins, who was an American singer who came up to Canada with Levon Helm and made quite a splash here in the 60s. Got together this band that featured Robbie Robertson, Levon Helm, Rick Danko, Richard Manuel, and of course, Garth Hudson, and put together them as his backing band. They eventually went on to back up Dylan when he went electric. And then, of course, after that, they went on to become the famous band. And Garth Hudson was the last living member of the band. We lost Robbie Robertson, of course, back in 2023, which was a huge loss. Levon Helm passed away in 2012. And then we lost other members of the band a long time ago, 25 years ago or 26 years ago now. We lost Rick Danko, the bass player of the band. He died in 1999. And then Richard Manuel, the singer and piano player for the band, died back in 1986, and really one of the most legendary bands of all time, one of the most legendary Canadian bands of all time. Like I said, Levon Helm of the band, he's from Arkansas. He wasn't Canadian, but they were all Canadian. Robbie, Rick, Richard, and Garth were all Canadian, all hailing from here in Southern Ontario, where I'm from. Robbie Robertson, like between Hamilton and Toronto, and other guys in London and Simcoe and Stratford and all these different parts of Southern Ontario. And I was just really thought that was really cool, because I think of the band as being on the same level as those other huge bands that I love, whether it be the Beatles or Led Zeppelin or the Beach Boys or Pink Floyd. Like, to me, the band really is up there in the upper echelon of the greatest classic rock bands of all time with those names. And the fact is that they were from Canada. These guys were from my part of the world. The Beatles are from Liverpool, Led Zeppelin from England, the Beach Boys from California. But it was awesome to have this legendary band, this band that backed up Dylan, being from my part of the world. And I always thought that was really, really cool. And I got into the band later on in my musical education. I wasn't really familiar with the band when I was young. Of course, I knew songs like The Weight, which is a huge hit, probably their most famous song. But then I got into the band much later on. When I was in college, when I was in university, I really got into the band. I really got into roots rock and really into classic rock. I devoured every album from the band. Actually, when I went over to England, I went over to London, England in 2006 to go visit my buddy Ryan, who we've had here on the channel. He was living over there, and I hadn't had any of the band albums on CD, and I was at HMV on Oxford Street, and they had all the band albums for sale on CD, and so I think I picked up pretty much the entire band discography and put them all in my backpack and brought them back to Canada. My backpack was like sagging as I was traveling back to Canada, because I had all the band CDs in my backpack. And then when you think about Garth Hudson as a musician, he was the next level. Like the other members of the band, obviously extremely musically talented, but Garth Hudson was the next level. He was musically trained. He was classically trained. He was a multi-instrumentalist who could play so many different things. And the band wanted him to join them, right? Because they thought, this guy really knows what he's doing. This guy can elevate our music and our sound. And that's exactly what Garth Hudson did with the band. He elevated their sound. He brought another level of musicality to their sound, where they could expand their songwriting and try different things and kind of know the theory and the musicality behind the music that they were making. And so when he joined the band, they were actually paying him $10 a week, because he was the guy that knew how to play the music and to show them how to be a great band. So Garth Hudson really was the game changer for the band. And then when you think about what he brought to them, because obviously the band was pretty much a roots rock and roll band, but then Garth Hudson had all these insane keyboard parts that he would play on their songs. When you think about Chest Fever from music from Big Pink, that epic organ intro, that is all Garth Hudson. And then it kicks into the rest of the song. He sets the stage for that song. And then when he played the Chest Fever live, he added another intro onto it called The Genetic Method, which was another huge organ-based piece that really just showed the mastery of Garth Hudson and what he could do on the keyboard. And then you think about other ones, his intro on This Wheels on Fire, which sounds almost like a video game. It sounds like Sega or Nintendo on This Wheels on Fire. Great intro for that. The clavinet that he plays on Up on Cripple Creek. Garth Hudson was a game changer when it came to the band, and I'm so sad that he passed away, because not only have we lost a legendary musician and a good soul and somebody who's brought us so much joy musically, he is the last of this very special group of people that are no longer with us. When you think about the Beatles, we still got Ringo, Paul, they're still with us, thankfully. Thank God that those guys are still with us. I want them to be with us as long as possible. When you think about the Beach Boys, we've lost some members of the Beach Boys, but we still got Brian Wilson with us. To a lesser extent, we still got Mike Love with us. But with Garth Hudson passing away, it really is the end of an era. He is the last surviving member of that original lineup of the band, and to lose him is the end of an era. and to lose all the members of the band. I got to see Levon Helm live, but I want to say about a decade ago, a bunch of years ago, before he passed away, and that was one of the best shows I've ever seen. He was older. Obviously, he couldn't sing the same way that he could when he was younger, but his drums were still just spot on. He was just holding down that band even at his age, and I was so happy to be able to see a living member of the band play live while they were still with us. Of course, we lost Levon. We've lost Robbie 2 years ago, back in 2023. Robbie Robertson was another huge loss, and now to lose Garth Hudson, the last living member of the band, is just devastating. So sending lots of love and thoughts out to Garth Hudson's family and friends and fans. All of us who've been listening to the band and listening to their music for all these years. Lots of people out there have been listening to them much longer than I have. Sending thoughts out to everybody. Garth Hudson of the band passes away at 87 years old, the last living member of the band. It's the end of an era, and I've been listening already to a lot of the band. I put Chest Fever on. I was listening to a lot of that. I'm going to keep listening to a lot of the band today in celebration of the life of Garth Hudson. So Garth Hudson, rest in peace. And taking a look at a couple album and track anniversaries of some albums and tracks that are celebrating their birthdays and anniversaries this week. Our Lady Peace's Clumsy, which came out in 1997, January 23rd, 1997, to be honest, celebrates its birthday this week. That was a huge record for me. I was talking about Do You Know What I Mean, the Oasis song, and the deep dive that I did here on the channel this week. 1997 was a good year for music because Our Lady Peace and Clumsy was a huge record for me back in 1997 when that album came out. I remember going to Limeridge Mall, the same place I still buy all my CDs and all my music these days. I remember going to Limeridge Mall and picking up Our Lady Peace, that album Clumsy, on CD. And I was just obsessed with that song, Superman's Dead, which was the first single off that record. And my parents were like, "Are you sure?" Because they were the ones buying it. I didn't have my own money when I was 13 years old, or I don't think I did, at least not a lot of it. But my parents were like, "Are you sure you want to buy that album? You only know one song." And that was always the argument, right? "You sure you want to spend that $15 or $20 on that CD? You only know one song, and the rest of the album might be shit." But that actually ended up being a solid album. Our Lady Peace and Clumsy. I remember being super excited for that record, and it actually lived up to the hype. That album is a good album. I like pretty much every song on that album, whether it be Car Crash or 4 a.m., Automatic Flowers, Carnival, Big Dumb Rocket, Clumsy, Superman's Dead. That's a great Our Lady Peace album. Can't really say the same for the most recent material or stuff they've done over the last decade or so, but that album, Our Lady Peace, Clumsy, is a great record, and that celebrates its birthday this week from January 23rd, 1997. Also celebrating a birthday this week is Beady Eye, the first song from Oasis without Noel Gallagher when they went on to form Beady Eye after Oasis broke up. They put out their first album, Different Gear, Still Speeding, and The Roller came out on January the 23rd, 2011 as their first single. And I have it here on vinyl, 7-inch vinyl that I got from a Beady Eye box set that I bought many, many years ago. The Roller and the B-side, Two of a Kind. Two of a Kind is a really, really great Beady Eye song, a really great Beady Eye B-side. And that was kind of cool too, that Beady Eye went back to releasing B-sides, kind of old school like Oasis used to do back in the day. There's the look at the vinyl. But that's one of my favorite Beady Eye songs. That was a great way to start off that band. They just absolutely sounded fantastic. And the Beady Eye didn't really live up to the hype as much as we wanted them to, but I think they came out of the gate with a great album and a great single, which is actually a leftover song. I think Gem had wrote the song originally for Oasis, but it was nice that Beady Eye ended up recording that one. Also celebrating a anniversary or birthday this week is My Hero, the single from the Foo Fighters, which was released in January of 1998. One of my favorite Foo Fighters songs, one of my favorite Foo Fighters songs to play on guitar. And then, just going back to The Color and the Shape from 1997, I think My Hero was the third single after Monkey Wrench and Everlong. And I just remember loving that song when it came out. Still love it. That amazing double-tracked drum fill. drum track from Dave Grohl is absolutely one of my favorites. And I always wondered how that ended up sounding so huge. And that's because Dave Grohl double tracked the drums for My Hero. And that's why maybe it doesn't sound as good when your band plays it at a show like my band used to. We tried our best, but maybe we couldn't get it sounding as epic as Dave Grohl. And then another album that's celebrating its anniversary this week on January 21st, 1977, we have Pink Floyd and Animals. Yes, this is one of my favorite Pink Floyd albums. That is the Battersea Power Station in London, UK. The time that I went to go visit my buddy Ryan, I went on the train and went right by the Battersea Power Station. There was not any pigs flying above it at the time, but it was still pretty epic to see this structure, which is now being renovated and all sorts of cool things, apartments and retail and all that kind of stuff. But this was taken in 1977 when that area of London, what I'm sure was a lot less posh or nice than it is now. But this is definitely one of my favorite Pink Floyd records. You know, Dogs is one of my favorite epic Pink Floyd songs. Pigs on the Wing is awesome. Sheep. It's a very long album. The songs on this album are extremely long, but I think this is maybe the last great Pink Floyd album. I love The Wall as well, but to me, you know, Animals is kind of the end of that classic era of Pink Floyd. And then another album that is celebrating its anniversary, its birthday this week on January the 24th. It came out in 2019. Maybe not as classic as Animals or My Hero by the Foo Fighters, and that's Weezer. And the Teal album. Do you guys remember when they put these out in 2019? The band recorded a album full of covers, called it the Teal album. This came out in between. It came out in between the White Album and the Black Album, I believe. So this came out in 2019 before the Black Album. And it's got their cover of Toto's Africa, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, their Tears for Fears cover, Take on Me, Sweet Dreams, Happy Together, Paranoid by Black Sabbath, Mr. Blue Sky, No Scrubs by TLC, Billie Jean by Michael Jackson, and Stand By Me. So I know maybe not a lot of Weezer fans are a huge fan of this particular release from the band, but I always really loved the TL album. I think it's got some solid covers on it. At least the Africa Toto cover is really, really cool. And it's maybe not the most classic Weezer album, but I have all their albums in my collection. So happy birthday to the Teal album. Happy birthday to Pink Floyd's Animals. Happy birthday to Foo Fighters and My Hero. And then happy birthday to Beady Eye the Roller and Our Lady Pieces Clumsy, all celebrating their rock anniversaries this week. And before we take off for this episode of the Rock News Roundup, guys, I just want to list my tracks of the week. I've been wanting to do this where I list a couple of different tracks every week that I think that you should check out, that I recommend it. I'm basing this week's recommendations around the story about Bush and their North American tour, playing the greatest hits with Filter and Rival Sons. So I've decided to pick a song by each of those bands for my track of the week. And for Bush, I'm going to pick something a little bit different. I know a lot of people expect the track of the week to be something from 16 Stone or Razorblade Suitcase or one of those big Bush hits, but I'm going to pick the song The Sound of Winter, which came from their 2011 album Sea of Memories. I think this is a later era Bush song that is just as good as anything off of those first two records or those first few records. And like I said, not necessarily a known Bush hit like Glycerin or Machine Head or Come Down or something like that, but I do really think this is a solid latter era Bush track, and I do hope and I do think that it'll be part of the set list when they do their greatest hits tour across North America with Filter and Rival Sons. So that leads to my other tracks of the week. For Rival Sons, I'm going to recommend the song Electric Man from their album Great Western Valkyrie that came out in 2014. Western Valkyrie. Electric Man is a great Rival Sons track. The vocal from Jay Buchanan on this is absolutely insane. The level of the heights that he hits with the notes that he sings on this song, he almost sounds like he's yodeling a little bit, as if Jay Buchanan wasn't already an extremely awesome frontman for the Rival Sons. He also does yodeling. Is there anything that this man can't do? And my final track of the week goes to Filter, going back to title of record all the way back in 1999. I'm talking about Welcome to the Fold, which is a huge, awesome rock song that Filter released on that album. I like Take a Picture, but Welcome to the Fold is definitely the best track and the best single from title of record. It's about 7 or 8 minutes long. It's epic. The riff is awesome. The lead vocal and the singing from Richard Patrick is absolutely insane on this track. So I highly recommend Welcome to the Fold by Filter, Electric Man by Rival Sons, and Sound of Winter by Bush as my tracks of the week. All right, guys, that is going to wrap it up for this edition of the Rock News Roundup Podcast. Please hop into the comments below and let me know your thoughts on any of the topics that we talked about on this episode of the show. If you enjoyed the show on YouTube, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. If you're listening to the audio version on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening, we'd appreciate a good rating and review. You can follow me on social media at Nick Chino Music, and then stay tuned for more videos on the channel coming this weekend and next week. And of course, another episode of the Rock News Roundup Podcast coming next week. But until then, rock on, everybody.